When we hear the term westering, we often think of a slow-moving migration towards the setting sun. But in reality, westering was a concept that had no geographic destination. The early explorers, fur trappers and traders, missionaries, and even many of the pioneers heading to new homes in the West were nomadic. Putting down roots and staying in one place was not in their blood. They were in constant motion, yearning to see what was just over the horizon. In this episode, we're going to look at some of the noted westering people in the early to mid-1800s. But before we do, we need to step back in time. Before the Spanish, Mexicans, Europeans, Canadians, and Americans, there were the true westering people, the indigenous people of the Great West. Long before Alexander Mackenzie became the first European to reach the Pacific Ocean from the U.S. or Canada in 1793, the Native Americans had established thousands of miles of recognizable foot, horse, and prairie buggy trails, which would serve as road maps for those who would come later. The early explorers and mountaineers did not blaze new trails. Instead, they learned to pick the best route to get them where they wanted to go from thousands of existing Indian traces. The first recorded commercial expedition west of the Missouri River was by the French-Canadian brothers Pierre-Antoine and Paul Millet, who in the spring of 1739 set out to reach Santa Fe in Nuevo Mexico. While their actual route is not exactly known, it is thought they first headed north, believing the Missouri River flowed to Santa Fe. After being told by Arikara Indians that Santa Fe was to the southwest, they backtracked, eventually reaching their destination in the summer of 1739. In 1804, Meriwether Lewis and William Clark would conduct the first government-sanctioned expedition in the West. When they descended the Missouri River in 1806 on their return trip, they met Americans heading up the river, independent adventurers determined to break the monopoly of the well-established English fur trading corporations such as the Northwest and Hudson's Bay Companies. Thus began the westward push by Manuel Lisa and Andrew Henry and the beginnings of the American fur trading industry, along with it thousands of fur trappers. In the early 1800s, these fur trappers and traders traveled throughout the Great American Desert, as it was coined by Stephen H. Long in his 1820 scientific expedition. Kit Carson, James Beckworth, Joseph Walker, Caleb O. Greenwood, James Kleiman, and Solomon Sublette, along with his four brothers, William, Milton, Andrew, and Pinckney, are just a few of the grizzled men who would travel thousands of miles and leave their mark on the history of the westward migrations, leading expeditions and wagon trains across the plains in the 1840s. In 1822, Manuel Lisa would commission Jedediah Smith, Jim Bridger, Thomas Broken Hand Fitzpatrick, and Etienne Provost to find a passage suitable for wagons through the Rocky Mountains. In 1830, William Sublette would bring the first wagons from St. Louis to the Wind River in the Rockies, and in 1832, Captain Benjamin Bonneville would take the first wagons through the South Pass to the Green River Valley. The combined effort of these trailblazers would provide the portal through which hundreds of thousands of pioneers would eventually pass. Jedediah Smith would go on to be one of the most prolific westering men in history. From 1822 until his death in 1831, he would travel and map large areas west of the Rocky Mountains. And in 1827, he would be the first man to find a passage over the Sierra Nevada mountains and then cross present-day Nevada to the Great Salt Lake. And from 1842 to 1853, expeditions led by John C. Fremont would map thousands of miles of previously uncharted territory, often following the traces set down by Native Americans over thousands of years. These expeditions would provide a clearer picture of the lands of the West and would promote settlement and acquisition of the land by the United States. But not all Westering men were explorers or trappers. In 1841, entrepreneur Joseph Childs would make the grueling 2,000-mile journey west with the Bidwell-Bartleson party, nearly perishing in the process. Once in California, seeing an opportunity to establish lumber and grist milling services, he would head back to Missouri in 1842 to purchase the necessary equipment, covering almost 3,000 miles. And in 1843, he would again head west to begin his business venture, but unfortunately lost all his equipment along the 3,000-mile journey. Undeterred, he would make the trip across the great American desert a total of 7 times before finally settling near present-day Davis, California in the early 1850s. One of these crossings included a trip to Washington, D.C. to be a character witness for John C. Fremont. Westering wasn't the exclusive domain of just men. In 1836, missionaries Narcissa Whitman and Eliza Spaulding would become the first white women to cross the Rocky Mountains, and by 1838 were 2 of the first 6 women to reach the Pacific Ocean from the United States. And in 1841, Nancy Kelsey would be the first white woman to cross the Sierra Nevada mountains in late October, doing so on foot while carrying her 1-year-old daughter, Annie. But the most prolific of the Westering people was Father Pierre Jean de Smet. Ordained in 1827, de Smet would begin a lifelong career of witnessing to Native Americans west of the Missouri River. An advocate of Native American rights, de Smet worked tirelessly to promote fair treatment of indigenous peoples. In addition to traveling throughout the unexplored West, de Smet would also make 16 crossings to Europe, amassing an astonishing 180,000 miles traveled before his death in 1873. Pierre Jean de Smet exemplified the true wandering spirit of the Westering people. Thomas Jefferson reportedly said it would take 100 generations to settle the lands of the Louisiana Purchase, and most experts expected it would take at least a generation, if not more, to blaze a single-season wagon road to Oregon. The fur trappers, government explorers, and missionaries, guided by the traces of Native Americans, did the job in just over a dozen years. Their nomadic spirit, coupled with true grit and determination, opened the West for hundreds of thousands of pioneers who would follow them to new lands.